harmonic spire glittered like a fractured diamond against the swirling violet clouds of Melodia Prime. Its crystalline halls resonated with the harmonic signatures of a dozen species, each note perfectly tuned to the frequencies of its architects. Commander Elias Vance adjusted the collar of his dress uniform as the anti-grav lift deposited him onto the main concourse. Around him, delegates floated, slithered, and strode with the confidence of civilizations that had mastered music as both art and science for millennia. "Human delegate," chimed a voice like wind through hollow reeds. A Zenthari glided toward him, its faceted body refracting the chamber's ambient light into prismatic patterns. "You are early." The harmonics carried unmistakable amusement. Vance forced a smile. Wouldn't want to miss the overture high Maestro Xylithis. The crystalline being emitted a discordant vibration, their version of a scoff. Behind Xylithis, a hulking Vorak warlord folded scaled arms across his chestplate. "Save your breath, soft skin," Krax rumbled, his vocal cords producing subsonic pulses that made Vance's teeth ache. "Your species' music is barely fit for hatchling creatures." Laughter rippled through the gathering delegates. A jellyfish like Quorvian pulsed with bioluminescent mirth, while a swarm of insectoid melic drones buzzed in harmonic derision. Vance's fingers brushed the data chip in his pocket, its edges biting into his palm. The council chamber doors irised open with a perfect C-sharp chime inside. The amphitheater's acoustics made every whisper carry like a shout. Vance took his seat at the human delegation's isolated podium, the only one lacking sonic dampeners or resonance projectors. "Today we assess Earth's petition for inclusion in the Galactic Harmonic Collective," announced the Quorvian moderator, its tendrils conducting the room's ambient vibrations into a formal cadence. "Sample submission Terran composition designated Moonlight Sonata." The name triggered another wave of alien amusement. A hologram flickered to life above the central dais. Beethoven's haunting piano notes filled the chamber, only for Xylithis to immediately emit a shattering counter. Frequency, the recording dissolved into static. "Primitive noise," the Zenthari declared, his crystalline form flashing crimson. "No structure, no mathematical purity, just chaotic emotional flailing." Krax's laughter shook the chamber. "My warriors' battle chants have more sophistication. At least ours can shatter asteroids." Vance watched as the Melic drones projected analysis graphs. "See," their hive, mind buzzed in unison. "No harmonic weapon potential whatsoever. Barely registers on the combat efficacy scale." A serpentine Yalithian delegate coiled around its perch. "Really human? Did you expect us to be impressed by these random vibrations? Even your so-called heavy metal lacks the precision to. That is enough." The moderator's bioluminescence dimmed to a solemn blue. "The council will now vote on humanity's inclusion in future harmonic exchanges." Vance didn't need telepathy to sense the outcome. One by one, the delegates pulsed, flashed, or vocalized their verdict. The Quorvian's glow faded to disappointment. "By unanimous decision, human musical contributions are hereby classified as non-artistic noise. Effective immediately, Earth musicians are barred from wait." Vance stood, his chair scraping against the resonant floor with an ugly screech. "You haven't heard our full repertoire." Xylithis emitted a derisive chime. "We've analyzed your entire cultural database, soft skin, from tribal drums to your pathetic attempts at opera. Nothing worth. I'm not talking about what we've shared." Vance removed the data chip, its matte black surface absorbing the chamber's light. "I'm talking about what we composed for you." For the first time, the chamber fell into true silence. Not the respectful pause of an audience, but the dead stillness of predators sensing danger. Krax was the first to recover. "More empty threats," he sneered, though his crest plates had flattened defensively. "Your sound waves couldn't dent a training drone." Vance slotted the chip into the podium's projector. The console rejected it with an error chime. "Of course, Xylithis vibrated smugly. Your primitive tech isn't compatible with... Vance entered an override code. The console beeped once, then displayed 2 words in stark Terran script. Project Requiem. The hologram that erupted wasn't sheet music. It was a star map, a tactical display showing every Xenthari colony world, every Vorak fleet anchorage, pulsing in time to a slow, ominous rhythm. Humanity's been studying harmonic warfare since we first heard wolves howl at the moon, Vance said softly. We just never had a reason to share our findings. The temperature seemed to drop as the realization spread. The Melik drone's harmonic shields flickered. The Quavian's bioluminescence dimmed to near invisibility. You wouldn't dare, Krax growled. But his subsonics now carried the faintest tremor. Vance removed the chip. Today's vote is noted. The United Earth Systems will comply with the Council's decision. He turned toward the exit, pausing only to add over his shoulder. For now, the chamber doors sealed behind him with a deafening, perfectly timed B-flat. Commander Elias Vance stepped through the airlock of the USN Chorus, the sterile lunar base lights reflecting off his polished insignia. His boots clicked against the metal grating, the sound swallowed by the cavernous research facility carved into the moon's crust. The air smelled of ozone and cold steel. About time you got here, Dr. Lena Chen called from across the lab, not looking up from her holographic displays. Her fingers danced through shimmering data streams, each touch sending ripples through the alien physiological models floating before her. I was starting to think the Council broke you. Vance approached, his eyes tracing the massive sonic resonators lining the walls. Each one stood 3 stories tall, their polished surfaces humming with dormant energy. They banned our music, Lena, called it primitive noise. His jaw tightened. Xylithis laughed when I tried to explain Mozart. Chen finally turned, pushing her glasses up her nose. The glow from the displays painted her face in shifting blues and greens. That is because they don't understand what music really is to us. She tapped a command, and the holograms shifted, showing crystalline Xenthari anatomy, their resonant structures highlighted in pulsing red. To them, harmony is just math. To us. A wicked grin spread across her face. It is a language, and we've been fluent in violence longer than they've had spaceflight. She led him to a sealed vault, its door marked with faded black stencils, Project Requiem, classified. The biometric scanner flashed green under her palm inside. Vance froze. The chamber stretched farther than the moon's curvature should allow, filled with rows of ancient-looking amplifiers and waveform generators. At its center stood a massive console, its screens displaying alien fleet movements and shifting frequency graphs. But what caught his breath were the handwritten notes plastered everywhere, sheet music scrawled with equations, margins filled with warnings in red ink. This was active during the first contact wars, Chen said, running a hand along the console. Back when we thought the Xenthari were going to glass Earth. We never used it. She pulled up a file, a grainy video of a Xenthari warship cracking apart in orbit, its crystalline hull shattering like dropped china. Test firing. Single resonant burst at Fei hertz. Vance stared. You're telling me we could have won that war in an afternoon? Won? Chen snorted. We could have turned their homeworld into a wind chime. She brought up another display, Vorak physiology, their nervous systems mapped in pulsing gold. Every species has a frequency, Elias, a note that makes them come apart. The Xenthari shatter, the Vorak. She tapped a key. The hologram convulsed, its nervous system liquefying into swirling sludge. Fei hertz. Their brains turned to soup before they even hear the bang. A cold realization settled in Vance's gut. That is why our music sounded chaotic to them. We've spent centuries composing with the full spectrum, including the lethal ranges. Chen nodded, pulling up a list of compositions. Beethoven's Fifth, the opening motif, sits right at Fey Hertz, close enough to make a Zenthari's teeth ache. Tchaikovsky's Fey Overture. Those cannon blasts in the finale. Perfect Dvorak disruptor pulses. She smirked. We've been writing war symphonies for fun. Vance picked up a data chip from the console, turning it over in his fingers. The label read, Symphony No Fey, Final Solution, and the council just gave us permission to remind them. Chen's grin turned feral. Oh, they didn't just insult our music, Elias. They insulted our restraint. She slammed her palm onto the console, and the entire facility thrummed to life. The massive resonators began glowing, their hum building to a teeth, rattling vibration. Let me show you what happens when humans stop composing. The main screen lit up with a single command prompt. Execute symphony. Why Vance didn't hesitate. His finger stabbed the key. Activate it. Somewhere in the dark between stars, the first note began to play. The USN Defiance drifted silently near the gas giant Melodia Prime, its blackened hull nearly invisible against the swirling violet clouds. Captain Ryan Blake adjusted the comm headset, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The ship's bridge hummed with restrained energy, the crew exchanging tense glances as the massive resonator array deployed from the belly of the vessel. Status report, Blake murmured, his voice low but carrying across the bridge. Resonator array at full extension, Captain, Lieutenant Cho responded, her fingers flying over the tactical display. Power levels optimal were locked onto the Zenthari fleet's position on the view screen. The crystalline warships of the Zenthari gleamed like jagged diamonds against the void. They moved with eerie grace, their formations precise, their arrogance palpable, even through the cold vacuum of space. Blake exhaled slowly. Open a channel to the chorus. A moment later, Dr. Lena Chen's face flickered onto the screen, her expression tight with anticipation. You're in position. Affirmative, Blake said, ready to play the first note. Chen nodded. Remember, Captain, Fei sheds. That's their breaking point. Hit them with a sustained pulse, and they won't know what shattered them. Blake smirked. Music to my ears. The comm crackled as the channel closed. Around him, the crew braced themselves. The Defiance wasn't a warship by design. It was a stealth vessel, a ghost in the dark. But today, it would become something far more terrifying. Engage the resonator, Blake ordered. The ship shuddered as the array activated, a deep throbbing hum resonating through the deck plates. The sound was barely audible to human ears. A single, pulsing note. HZ rippled outward, invisible but deadly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Zenthari fleet reacted. On the view screen, the nearest crystalline warship began to tremble. At first, it was subtle, a faint vibration along its razor-edged hull. Then the vibrations intensified, the ship's structure quivering like a struck tuning fork. What the... one of the bridge officers whispered. A Zenthari cruiser's comms suddenly blared to life, screeching with panicked harmonics. The translation software struggled to keep up, but the meaning was clear. Cease this. The plea cut off as the cruiser's hull fractured, cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, glowing with internal stress. Then, with a silent explosion of glittering shards, the ship shattered. The bridge crew stared, stunned, as debris scattered in every direction. One down, Blake said, his voice steady. Let's see if the others got the message. But the Zenthari hadn't. High Maestro Xylithis' face appeared on the main screen, his crystalline form flickering with rage and disbelief. Human, what abomination is this? Blake leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. You called our music primitive, Maestro. Consider this a remix. Xylithis' form shuddered, his body vibrating unnaturally. You dare. The Harmonic Council will... His words dissolved into a scream as the resonance reached him. Cracks raced across his body, his once pristine form fracturing like glass. The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving only static. Another Zenthari ship exploded. Then another. "Captain," Cho said, her voice tight. "Their fleet's breaking formation. Some are trying to flee." Blake watched as the remaining Zenthari ships veered away, their crystalline structures visibly trembling even at a distance. "Track them," he ordered. "Don't let a single one escape." The Defiance's engines flared as it pursued, the resonator array pulsing relentlessly. The Zenthari had mocked humanity's music, dismissed it as noise. Now they were learning the truth. Humanity's songs had teeth. One by one, the Zenthari warships succumbed to the harmonic onslaught, their crews helpless as their very bodies resonated apart. The void around Melodia Prime filled with glittering debris, a macabre symphony of destruction. Blake exhaled slowly as the last Zenthari cruiser burst apart. The bridge was silent, the crew absorbing what they'd just done. Then the comm crackled again. It was Vance. "Captain Blake," he said, his voice calm but edged with satisfaction. "I take it the first movement was a success." Blake grinned. "Oh, it was beautiful. Ready for the next act." Vance's smirk was audible. The Vorak won't know what hit them. The Defiance pivoted, its engines flaring as it set course for the next target. The galaxy had underestimated human music. Now, it would never make that mistake again. The bridge of the USN Atlantica hummed with restrained energy. Lieutenant Mara Kessler's fingers danced across her tactical console, her eyes locked on the Vorak battle fleet looming ahead. The reptilian warships bristled with sonic disruptors, their jagged hulls pulsing with the deep crimson glow of active shields. "Status report," Captain Ryland barked, his voice tight. Kessler didn't look up. "Vorak fleet holding position, sir. They're hailing us, again." On the main viewer, Warlord Krax's scaled face filled the screen. His slit pupils narrowed in amusement. "Human vessel," he hissed, his voice layered with the subsonic growl of his species. "You dare approach a Vorak armada with music." His warriors laughed behind him, the sound like grinding stones. Kessler's lips curled. "Oh, we're not here to play music, lizard." She tapped a command. "We're here to conduct." The Atlantica's massive base cannons, retrofitted dreadnought speakers the size of small buildings, unfolded from its hull. The Vorak didn't react. Their shields were designed to withstand the gravitational shear of neutron stars. What harm could sound do? "Fire when ready, Lieutenant," Ryland said quietly. Kessler's thumb hovered over the trigger. With pleasure, she pressed it. The first pulse was a physical force, a subharmonic wave that warped space as it traveled. The Vorak fleet shimmered, then shuddered. Krax's smirk faltered as his command deck's lights flickered. What the second pulse hit, Vorak warriors clutched their heads, their armored knees buckling. The frequency wasn't attacking their ships, it was attacking them. Kessler watched, cold satisfaction settling in her chest as the enemy's vital signs spiked on her screen. "Right on schedule," she murmured. On the viewer, Krax collapsed, his claws scraping at his skull. "Stop it," he roared, his voice breaking. "You're tearing us apart." Kessler leaned forward. "You called our music weak," she said, her voice calm. "Now dance to it." The third pulse detonated like a silent supernova. Vorak battleships convulsed, their crews spasming as the resonance liquefied their nervous systems. Warriors tore off their helmets, screaming as their eardrums burst. Krax writhed on the deck, his body seizing in time with the rhythm. One by one, the ships went dark. The Atlantica's crew watched in silence as the last Vorak cruiser imploded, its hull crumpling like paper in the grip of an invisible hand. The debris field pulsed once, then went still. Kessler exhaled. "Symphony's over, Captain." Ryland nodded, his face unreadable. "Send the recording to the Harmonic Council. Let them hear what happens when they mock humanity's art." Kessler input the command, her fingers steady. Somewhere, in the wreckage of the Vorak fleet, a single distorted transmission crackled, a dying warrior's final, shuddering breath. She muted it. The galaxy would learn its lesson soon enough. The Harmonic Council chambers had never known silence like this. Commander Elias Vance stood at the center of the amphitheater, the holographic debris of shattered fleets flickering above him like macabre chandeliers. The Zenthari High Maestros crystalline throne sat empty, its occupant reduced to glittering dust. The Vorak warlord, Krax's seat, was a puddle of viscous fluid, his armored body unable to contain the liquefaction of his own nervous system. The remaining delegates stared. A jellyfish, like Melodian, quivered inside its containment sphere, bioluminescence flickering erratically. A six-armed Cyrenian diplomat clutched her audio dampeners like a lifeline. Even the telepathic Cerebrians who communicated in pure thought had gone unnaturally still. "You," the Melodian's voice emerged as a wet, trembling warble. "You composed this?" Vance adjusted his uniform sleeve, flicking away a stray shard of Zenthari crystal. Every note. The Cyrenian's primary arms gestured at the devastation hovering above them. "This isn't music. This is war," Vance interrupted. He tapped the data chip labeled Project Requiem against his palm. "No, war is messy, unrefined this." He nodded to the holograms of Vorak dreadnoughts, convulsing in perfect rhythmic collapse. "This is precision." A Cerebrian's mental voice slithered into the chamber, thick with disbelief. "Your species created harmonic resonance weapons and disguised them as art." Vance smiled. Beethoven's Fifth was a warning. "This," he gestured to the silent wreckage, "this is Wagner." The Melodian's tentacles spasmed. "You'll be sanctioned. The Federation will what?" Vance's voice, cut like a scalpel. "Ban us from more concerts." He strode forward, boots clicking against the resonant crystal floor. "Your High Maestro mocked Earth's primitive noise. Your council voted unanimously to exclude us." He stopped beneath the hologram of the last Zenthari cruiser, disintegrating into harmonic dust. "You didn't just insult our music. You dared us to prove you wrong." The Cerebrian's telepathic voice turned frantic. "You've annihilated 2 sovereign fleets. The political repercussions are exactly 0. Vance pulled a small transmitter from his pocket. "Because the US and Chorus is currently broadcasting this entire conversation to every diplomatic channel in the Federation." He tilted his head. "Would you like to explain to the galaxy why you provoked the species who weaponized symphonies?" Silence. The Cyrenian's secondary arms twitched toward the emergency frequency beacon, then froze as Vance cleared his throat. "Ah, before you call for help." He nodded to the holograms shifting to a new feed, the USN Defiance and Atlantica hovering near Melodia Prime, their resonator arrays humming at standby. "Our second movement is prepped. Unless, of course, the Melodian's bioluminescence dimmed to near invisibility." "What do you want?" Vance slid the data chip across the floor. It skidded to a stop at the trembling Cyrenian's feet. "Revoke the ban." The Cerebrian's mental scoff was weak. "You obliterate fleets over a cultural slight, not a slight." Vance's smile vanished. "A test. You wanted to see if humanity's art was worthy of your stage." He gestured to the ruins. "Now you know." The delegates exchanged glances. The Cyrenian's lower arms picked up the chip with trembling digits. The vote took 11 seconds. Unanimous. Vance bowed, just deep enough to be insulting. "Pleasure doing business." He turned toward the exit, then paused. "Oh, and next time Earth sends a cultural attach Faye." He didn't look back. Listen. Behind him, the Melodian delegate vomited a stream of phosphorescent fluid. The Cerebrian's telepathic chatter dissolved into panicked white noise, and the Harmonic Council, for the first time in galactic history, had nothing to say. The grand concert hall on New Vienna Station hummed with an energy it had never felt before. Alien delegates from a dozen species packed the seats, their forms shimmering, shifting, or armored, but all of them utterly still. The stage, once reserved for the refined harmonies of the Zenthari or the thunderous war, chants of the Vorak, now stood empty except for a single human conductor. Dr. Lena Chen watched from the wings, her fingers tapping against her datapad. The readout scrolled endlessly, heart rates, neural activity, even the minute vibrations in the crystalline bodies of the Zenthari observers. Fear, the data whispered. Or, a small Zenthari child, no taller than a human 6-year old, its facets catching the stage lights in prismatic flares, tugged at its parent's arm. "They're really going to play?" it asked. Its voice a delicate chime. The parent, a diplomat who had once sneered at human noise, hesitated. "Yes, it finally resonated, and we will listen." Chen smiled. The conductor raised his baton. The holographic orchestra, a mix of human and alien instruments, all tuned to human specifications, flickered to life. The first note of Beethoven's Ninth rolled out, deep and resonant, and the crowd flinched. A Vorak ambassador, his scales still dull from the neural damage, his kind had suffered, gripped his seat. This is the same species that shattered fleets with sound. Chen leaned over to the Zenthari diplomat beside her. "You called our music primitive," she murmured. "But you never asked why we composed it." The music swelled, not the weaponized frequencies of Project Requiem, but the raw, unfiltered power of human artistry. The Zenthari child gasped as the chorus erupted, human singers' voices blending with the synthesized tones of alien instruments. Its facets shivered, not with fear, but with something else. "Beautiful," it chimed softly. Chen exhaled. "That's the point." In the back row, Commander Vance crossed his arms, watching the Vorak warlord Krax, now stripped of his armor, his once mighty frame hunched, struggled to keep his breathing steady as the symphony's crescendo hit. The warlord's claws dug into his knees. "Problem?" Vance asked. "Just loud enough to be heard over the music." Krax's yellow eyes flicked to him. "You're kind, you hid this." Vance shrugged. "We didn't hide it. You just refused to hear it." On stage, the conductor swept into the final movement. The Zenthari delegates rang, their crystalline bodies resonating in harmony with the music. The jellyfish, like melodians, pulsed in time, their bioluminescence flaring like stars. Even the Vorak, though they'd never admit it, tapped their claws in rhythm. Chen's datapad pinged. A message from Captain Blake, still aboard the Defiance, heard the councils making human music mandatory in all Federation schools. "Guess they finally got tired of losing fleets to our noise." She snorted. The symphony ended. The hall erupted, not in the polite, reserved tones of alien applause, but in a cacophony of clapping, chiming, and even a few Vorak roars. The Zenthari child rushed forward, its tiny facets glowing. "Can I learn?" it asked the conductor, pointing at the violin resting on a stand. The conductor, an old man who'd once been booed off this very stage, knelt. "Of course," he said, offering the instrument. "But fair warning, human music. It changes you." The child took the violin, its facets shimmering with determination. "Good." Chen turned to leave, but not before catching Vance's eye. He nodded once. Mission accomplished. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, but for the first time in history, the galaxy was listening. The USN Defiance hummed with victory as Captain Ryan Blake leaned back in his command chair, the bridge crew exchanging grins. Alien liquor, A shimmering blue liquid gifted by the now terrified Harmonic Council swirled in his glass. The ship's speakers, once silent under galactic mockery, now thundered with Tchaikovsky's Fey Overture. "Volume up," Blake ordered, and the opening strings swelled. Across the view screen, the wreckage of Zenthari and Vorik fleets drifted like cosmic debris. Every cannon blast in the music synced perfectly with the Defiance's railguns, their barrels still warm from battle. Lieutenant Cho, their tactical officer, raised his glass to humanity's refined taste in music. The crew laughed, clinking glasses as the overture built toward its crescendo. Ensign Rivera, their youngest officer, shook her head in awe. "They really thought we didn't understand harmonics. We invented the damn symphony." Blake smirked. "Turns out, loud is a universal language." A proximity alert chimed. The Defiance's sensors lit up with incoming ships. Not enemies, but a convoy of Zenthari vessels, their crystalline hulls still cracked from the battle. Their lead ship hailed the Defiance, and High Maestro Xylithis' fractured visage appeared on screen. His once pristine form was now webbed with fissures, his resonance chambers buzzing with static. You broke us," Xylithis whispered. Blake sipped his drink. "No, we played for you." The overture hit its climax, the brass section blaring as the Defiance's railguns charged in perfect sync. Xylithis flinched at the sound, his crystalline body vibrating. "Please, relax," Blake said, waving a hand. "The guns powered down. This one's just for show. But remember, next time your council insults human culture," he leaned forward, grinning, "we play heavy metal." The transmission cut. The bridge erupted in cheers as the Defiance's engines flared to life, the overture's final notes ringing through the ship. In the mess hall, crew members danced between tables, their laughter mixing with the music. Sergeant Hale, a grizzled veteran, pounded the bulkhead in time with the cannons. "Damn right we showed him. Who's primitive now?" Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the comms from Earth. "Captain, the Council's just announced a human-led interstellar orchestra. They're calling it the Symphony of Reconciliation." Blake snorted. "Reconciliation, my ass. They're scared shitless." Chen chuckled. "And they should be. We've got centuries of music left to weaponize." The Defiance pivoted toward the jump point, its hull gleaming under the light of Melodia Prime. Blake raised his glass one last time. "To Earth, the galaxy's new maestros." The crew roared in approval as the warp drive engaged. Behind them, the shattered fleets and silent council bore witness to humanity's final note: never underestimate the species that turned art into annihilation. The stars blurred as the Defiance vanished, leaving the galaxy listening very, very carefully.